guys, in manufacturing, we have more than 500,000 gap in the US.
Yep.
So we need more people, not less.
Right.
And we need people with better different skills. So we need to train the people more. So what that tells you is technology is not a threat in manufacturing, in supply chain, in procurement. Bring your people with you, help them, train them, and we need more people.
Hi, I'm Ed Bellina.
Hello, guys. Alvaro Cuba here.
Well, welcome to the Manufacturing Meetup Podcast, the show where we kick back on our downtime and we tell great stories, much of which are true, but we actually learn from each other and share our little tips and tricks and love to get them from you. And we're also known for wearing silly hats like this.
Yeah, I can see that summer is coming.
Summer,
Yeah.
yes.
How about your hat?
So my hat, I was fishing or attempting to fish in Canada last week for 5 days. Note to self, never go up there until the end of May because the weather was horrible. I caught a bluegill about this big and one other fish about this big. But the time was phenomenal. I learned a lot about the Gananaqua area and the St. Lawrence River, and it was glass. So this was my fishing hat. That's why I'm wearing it today.
I know.
Alvaro,
I know.
you always have, what is
No,
that, a shark?
this is just my home one, Miami Beach, because next couple months I am put in town just for the soccer tournament. So no traveling for me in the next 2 months.
You are grounded, my friend.
I'm grounded for 2 months, but worth it. I can tell you guys, worth it.
You know, that passion, that soccer passion is incredible.
Yeah.
You know, those of us have had an opportunity to kind of live in other countries in the world. I mean, as crazy as we are about our sports here, the soccer fans are like one level above that almost. And it's great to watch. So anyway, that's the story with the hat, right? And hopefully I'll get to take it off because somebody said I look like a little old lady in the prairie or something.
I haven't said anything, amigo. I haven't said anything.
Okay. It was a great show. So Alvaro recently sent an article to us about P&G supply chain and kind of where they're going. And it really inspired today's topic, right? So please listen to our reaction to this and a little bit of an expansion and tell our meetup buddies. And also kind of let us know, why did it catch your attention? We'll tell you what caught ours. Alvaro?
Yeah, in reality with Ed, we are out in the plants and we are seeing so much great, cool technology in safety, in quality, with AI, in maintenance, and doing amazing things. But what we are not seeing is connecting all this and bringing really the plants to the next level. So we were saying, what is missing? What is not connecting? If the technology is there, why we are not seeing this step up in driving excellence? But first, please, hit the subscribe button at the bottom of the screen so you can follow our conversations and stay with us, give us your comments. And with that, let's get started.
Let's do it.
So let me set the stage first with a couple examples on CPGs and as we were saying in the introduction about the capabilities, no? And we saw an article on P&G that was explaining a lot of what these guys are doing. And basically, they are working in two areas. One is manufacturing and warehousing. They are doing a lot of automation. And even they are starting to pilot in 9 different plants the light out, which means 4 hours at night, nobody in the plant, and the plant runs alone. No, and they are finding amazing, no, between 15 and 60% increase in productivity in these cases. And in the other side, they are working is integrating systems. No, even P&G with all the experience, and Ed can tell us a little bit more. He worked there, trying to integrate customer order, production planning, material order, and with this, they are showing. They are thinking $1.5 billion on revenue, on cutting costs, take service to 98% on-shelf availability, and those kinds of numbers. We also have seen Pepsi going AI and twin technologies. Hershey just announced $100 million in inventory reductions because of AI technology. So, as Ed and I always say, the ideal is you need to hit revenue, cost, and inventory. But what we are seeing is packets of it versus big integrations, global rollouts, connecting all the dots. What are you seeing out there, Ed?
Yeah, spot on. And we had also looked at some of the McKinsey data. McKinsey had an interesting report that just came out, and we'll share the link in the show notes, folks, so you can access it yourself. They're quick reads, but they're full of really great information. So here are the headlights. Over 100 manufacturing CEOs were surveyed, and not surprisingly, 74% of them said, yes, of course we have a global production system, right? And what are we doing, from an AI standpoint for that system to work together? And said, well, we have AI, but we're only about 29 or 30% implemented across all sites. And nobody, not surprisingly, said they were fully integrated. So to Alvaro's point, we've got pockets. We have pockets of the same agents working in facilities, right? Sometimes different agents trying to do the same thing. So the governance of this is starting to get a little crazy, but nobody has gotten to the point where we are now starting to standardize and then integrate both vertically and horizontally, right? Because you want to integrate all the way up and down the supply chain. You also want to integrate with your customers, and marketing and et cetera. So,
and it happened to
us.
And it happened to us. I'm sure you remember the times of SAP.
Oh my God,
integration, yes. No?
Right.
We got the system, and SAP was doing everything from one end to the other, and it was the Holy Grail. Trying to get it to work, integrated across, or Lean or Six Sigma, always packets and things like that. And I'm sure you had all the same experience.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that I saw work is when, I remember early days at P&G Mahupany, we decided to roll out statistical process control and Deming TQA, right? And there was no question. The training went on. We brought in, control charting and all that, and we were all moving together, and that had tremendous value. That's a small example. One that I'd like to talk about that highlights what Alvaro is saying is CMMS, right? So we're moving on to now segment 2, so I don't want to steal all my thunder, but CMMS is an example where we've instituted in a bunch of places and it hasn't quite delivered. So moving on to segment 2, why do good systems stall out, right? So let me just segue into that. CMMS systems, most companies have invested enormous amounts of money in computerized maintenance management systems, right? That's CMMS, or some sort of a system that allows you to track preventive maintenance, equipment history. The real good ones have the potential to link to storeroom parts and even order parts for you when they're pulled out of inventory through a work order process, right? Great. This is not scientific, so you can, diffuse this a little bit, but I would tell you at least 50% of the places that I have had experience with instituted CMMS systems and have maybe about a 50% take rate. Okay. The PM work orders, half of the time, they're not really scrubbed to be effective. We don't capture a lot of the reactive or breakdown work, and we don't build that into the equipment histories to reach the promise of CMMS, which is like, hey, you have all this data. We're going to tell you what equipment fails first, and here's the cost and all that. The promise was never fully delivered. And what I saw at P&G, my time there, is what worked at P&G was the culture and the discipline, right? When P&G said, we're going in this direction, once it got there, there was no, oh, well, I don't want to do that, or I want to try my own homegrown version. No, this is the path, right? And a huge amount of discipline around that. There were no side systems, right? SAP, Alvaro, you roll out SAP and you find out you have 170 processes that nobody ever identified, but they run your enterprise on Excel spreadsheets, right?
And what was the percentage of SAP that even the best companies used?
Right.
20, 30%, 40%. I don't know.
And some of this kind of makes sense, folks, because SAP strives to be a system-wide enterprise, right? They have modules for finance, for HR, for manufacturing, for logistics, everything under the sun. But that old adage, master of all trades, or I'm sorry, I didn't say that right. It sounds like the journeyman of all trades, but master of none. By definition, when you try to grab a whole enterprise, there are some modules in SAP that are phenomenal, and there are some that are not so great. I will use the example of the predictive models compared to Augury. Not even close, right? So you always wind up in this back and forth. But if I kind of roll it up, implementation, right? You have to have the right culture. You have to write the right discipline. And the last thing that I will add is you need patience, okay? Procter & Gamble, at least in the time I was with him, understood that these journeys were 3 to 10 years. And they didn't just fund it for 2 years and then say, oops, it didn't deliver instant pudding, and they cut the program. I've been in some enterprises where that has happened, and we have relaunched some of these programs 3 or 4 times under different monikers. That's not the way to do it. Alvaro?
But I would say that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And technology is a great enabler these days. Ed was mentioning the McKinsey study with 100 CEOs, and what they have found is that now that the technology, AI, and the technology is there, it's less about uniformity of tools. It's less about standardization across, because that doesn't help to turn insights into execution. No, what they are finding is that the key is how I the fastest get data and insights. That's the first element, they say. And getting the right data, and we talk about this, is transparency. Gives you a baseline,
right?
Benchmark, visibility, and that's the starting point. Once you get that, what they are finding is the second element is referring to what Ed was saying. It's culture, it's people. No, it deals with capability, training of the people, flexibility, repetibility of behavior. And even they throw one, which is coaching, which I found really, really interesting. And if just to finish the idea, if you have this data and you have the people with the enough flexibility and power, and the data is telling you what to do, you can react very quickly. And then technology helps you to accelerate the results. Then you start getting the power of all this technology. Sorry, Ed, You were
No, no,
saying.
no, no, no. Your point around standardization is an interesting one, right? Because at a base level, you need standardization, right? If you're building a house, you need your foundation to have all the blocks be at the same level and all that. No different in these enterprises. So you need to standardize on how you measure performance, right? So why do I call that efficiency? What does that mean? Do I use OEE or some other method? But I was in a situation where we would acquire smaller companies, and the first thing that I usually did was I standardized their output expectations, because some of these outfits were holding themselves accountable, let's say, for 400 bottles a minute on a filler, that we knew our OEM standards were 600, right? So you got a level set, but once you get that level, you have to allow standardization of the solutions. Back to the SAP discussion, right? They try to one size fits all approach, and that's not necessarily this uniformity, the right model anymore. It's about having the flexibility. So if you think about agents, right? These agents, you have a predictive maintenance agent, right, that pops up and gives you data about vibration and all this, and it outputs that in a certain language. You have another one that does supply chain planning. You need those to be linked because you're going to shut equipment down, right? But that speaks in a different language. You need an ontology above that that translates it and provides people like Alvaro and I with insight. So we don't have to be the translator, because it's impossible, right? So,
Yeah, but uh, there is a transformation. It's the next wave, no? Industry 4.0, 5.0. It's the next wave. So we are hopeful that we don't need to deal with the SAPs or the leans or the TPMs the way we need them. We need the base,
yes,
we need the structure, we need the systems, but we don't need to deal with them in the old way. Now
right.
that we have AI technology, think about ChatGPT, no? When in the old way, you were going and you were spending 2 3 hours in the library, or
Digging.
digging, or in internet and all that, and then you had massive amount of data, and then you had to compress it and try to get the nuggets that you needed, and then interpret that in a way that people can listen. Now you just ask ChatGPT, and all that took you a lot of time. In
Even
30
even
seconds,
yeah, even
you
if you could.
have it. Even if you could, because in many cases you couldn't, now it gives you that. So it's clearly that the world is changing and the technology is exploding in those sense. So the question here, and this moves us to segment 3, is how, using that technology, we in the companies use that to accelerate this improvement and really start harnessing the power of this technology and getting that into the results. Ed?
Yeah, it really is amazing, and Alvaro and Sarah, who's our great producer here, have heard a lot about me with ChatGPT, where I went from zero to, like, I'm a little crazy these days, fast. Here's an example. I've had a problem. I had a problem getting a side view mirror.
And I have to suffer that.
You're guilty. You were guilty. You started me on this. So I had an accident with a deer, and I had to get a side view mirror for my vehicle replaced. I'm not going to mention names, but it took that company 7 months to find that mirror in the time that my vehicle was not fully operable. Well, I've gone back and forth, and one question I thought to myself was, how unique is this mirror? I'm driving down the road, and I said, "Hey Siri, ask ChatGPT," and it came on, and I described what I was asking for. Right? It said, "Oh, that mirror is also available. Is also for this vehicle and this vehicle and that vehicle." Right? So I'm like when I'm talking to them, I don't want to hear that mine is a bespoke, carved away in Regensburg, Germany. I'm not going to mention any names, right? But no, you put this in 5 other of your models. So don't tell me this thing was as rare as hen Steve. So I will stop with that, but I thought you would appreciate that one. Um, so what does this mean if you're starting a journey? So look, it's not easy, right? You can't automatically compare yourselves against a P&G or some of these other, Fortune 50 leaders, right, in the field, because having spent some time at Procter and Gamble, and to this day they remain a company that I hugely admire. They have had decades of process knowledge, adherence, discipline, culture, right? It's a lot easier when your data and all that is fairly organized, right? To be able to start doing some of this than if you got to hunt around and get people with the discipline of like even capturing information. So the funny thing is the technology is moving so fast that by the time P&G launches this supply chain 3.0, which by the way, as you heard, is mostly around automation, right? They're going to be behind, not behind, but kind of behind where the technology potential is. But that's okay because they will still be leading the field. So, if you're a mid-sized manufacturer or, you're not, you don't have a perfect operating, system, where does that leave you and how do you just get started? And before I turn over to Alvaro, I would like to note that I see a pattern here. I'm the bad guy that sets up the problem. Then Alvaro comes in as the savior to say, Ed said this. Let me show you how you deal with that. Sorry.
Okay, we are part of a team, right? Someone has to
Right.
do every time. So I'll take it.
Yes, sir.
We'll turn tables for
We'll
the
turn
next
tables. We always do.
episode. We always do. So uh, think about the way I can think is, and Ed was talking about the P&Gs, the Toyotas, the Motorolas. No, for instance, how long it took to them to get to a three-layer plant, how much organization and things had to happen to get to that level.
Training alone, right? Massive
Training
undertaking.
alone, systems, interactions, and many things. Fast forward, technology today. So even if you are a mid-size company, AI takes care of the insights. It was talking about the maintenance example. But for safety, you put some simple cameras. Or for quality control, you put some simple cameras, you connect those into Wi-Fi. They start sending information. And now you know what AI can do with that information. The same as ChatGPT. So
right.
You bypass a lot of that, and that information even translates into actions, and those actions goes into your people. No, and that comes the second element. You have to train and empower your people. That's the second element, and it's squarely on you. With those two elements, like McKinsey was saying, if I have good insights and I have people trained, flexible, and ready to go, you launch into action. So do it for maintenance, predictive maintenance, or do it for safety, or do it for quality control. Just jump into one of them. Very, very easy, very fast. And then learn, take the learning cycle.
Yep.
Learn what works, what doesn't work. You are not investing a lot of money to just, if you are failing fast, not much money, right. Just come back and do it the other way. But there is a lot that today the technology can do that allows you to accelerate the paths to get to where it took 10 years to P&G probably, or to Kraft Foods, or right. Even the Japanese, it took 20 years.
It's decades. It was generational.
At that time. So in these days, when you see the new companies, when you see what Apple is doing with OpenAI, they are doing it in 6 months. They are integrating completely OpenAI into the Apple system in 6 months. Why? Because they are using the technology to help them to do that. So I don't know. What do you think, Ed?
Yeah, The barrier today is much lower than we used to think, right? I remember, you guys know I'm a diehard infrared thermography person. The first camera I ever saw was the size of a Betamax, about this big, and cost $65,000, and was cooled by helium gas. Now they're like this, and they're like $400. You can attach them to your cell phone. So the technology has lowered the price of entry, and I'll give you a quick story. When I was still involved full time in the beverage business, we installed equipment sensors on about 12 pieces of equipment in our Fresno facility, and within about 3 months. Right, so not a huge investment, very reasonable, right? They were on critical pieces of equipment, our water pumps, etc. Within 3 months, they identified issues that would shut the whole plant down for 8 hours each, if not longer, right? And the rate of return on that was astronomical. And this is not that expensive. The technology is available. And Alvaro had talked a little bit about the use of digital twins. I've mentioned this before. I was at a session where I was able to see a digital twin at Pepsi's R&D labs, and what that can do for a line, and I was blown away. I mean, literally, you have a model of a bottle line, and you can load in some new bottle design that the marketing guys want, right? And run it on the line virtually and speed. I was watching, it was so cool. When it started at 300 bottles a minute, the bottles looked pretty good. So as we hit about 600, they were wobbling and falling all over the place. We went back and told the marketing guy, no triangle points on the bottom. Sorry, no pyramids. Doesn't work, guy. Exaggerating, but sometimes you have to have the actual proof. So don't be afraid of the technology, and you can take it one bit at a time. Okay. You don't have to conquer everything in one day. Start small, show the benefit, show the ROI, and you build credibility with the organization.
Yeah, it's I think McKinsey. I love the way they paraphrase it. It's They say the power of continuous and connected insights, no, and into execution. But with all we talk about the continuous and connected insights, it's about technology.
Right.
These days. In many years ago, it was about many other things, but today it's about technology, and it's cheap, easy to implement, low barrier of entry, so you can go for it. And then the next piece is the people, the culture, the training, the skills, how the peer exchange works, how the leaders help to see the big picture and orchestrate it, governance and culture. So some key takeaways that...
Yeah, listen, just take a step, okay? Just take a step down this road. I'm not gonna guarantee that you're gonna get it perfect, and you may not. Your first AI pilot may not go very well, but you will learn from it, and you will not have been signing up. So typically, right, guys like Alvaro and I, we're asked to put together productivity plans, and they include a big capital list that we know is going to get cut in half, right? So you put some sacrificial lambs in there ahead of time, but you're talking an investment of, you may have $200 million worth of capital to spend in a year. You're investing for the next 20, 30 years, right? You're going to be paying depreciation on that equipment, for that long. This stuff we're talking about literally is in the tens of thousands of dollars in some cases, and have returns that are in, like, the months, not the years. So it's easier to take a risk, right, and not feel like you're going to get burnt, right? So that's a thought. Also, kind of be honest and understand where you stand today, right? Be blatantly honest. If your baby's ugly, call your baby ugly, and then figure out, you know, from the standpoint of building the strategy, right? The execution, where do you start? Alvaro gave you some of these. Start standardizing some of your measurements, right? Start talking to your people about AI. Do a little research. There's a ton of companies out there that provide agentic solutions. And for me right now, the money's in agentic. Eventually, it'll be system optimization. That, in my opinion, is years from now.
Yeah. So I would say just a couple of things. Don't
Right.
be afraid, technology, go and get that. And then focus on your people, no? So flexible, curious people, educate them to learn, no? Because nowadays with technology it's easy to learn, but they need to have this habit to learn. And the last thing that I would say is there is a lot of buzz out there about the technology and the people. Guys, in manufacturing, we have more than 500,000 gap in the US.
Yep.
So we need more people, not less.
Right.
And we need people with better different skills. So we need to train the people more. So what that tells you is technology is not a threat in manufacturing, supply chain, in procurement. Bring your people with you, help them, train them, and we need more people. At the end, everyone is going to tell you technology coupled with the people is where you should go for a step up.
That's your secret. That's a secret sauce right there. And look, folks, the current pushback that you've been hearing about about AI is no different than every other industrial revolution we have experienced, right? I remember reading some novels and some books where when the internal combustion engine first came out and there were people driving cars past horse and buggies like it was going to be the end of the world. Oh my God, this is not going to work. The horses are going to get run away and they're going to kill people and all this. And every time, every change, right? When we went from, the shoemaker to the shoemaking factory, people thought, oh my God, that's the end of labor. It's never the end of labor, but we really do have to address this issue because there is a buzz out there that is creating a real negative wave about AI because they're trying to tell people, oh, that means everybody's going to lose their job, right? Everything's going to be done. No, it's not. But we do have a social responsibility to craft a vision that enables people to see their place in that future society.
Exactly.
And the good news is, folks, is we're looking to upscale your work, right? To make your work more interesting and less boring.
Yeah.
And utilize all of your talents.
Exactly.
Right? So
with that, we are optimistic about this, and we think it's going to be a tremendous help and a tremendous source of growth for the people and for the companies, no? Because once you put together technology and the people, you are going to have a big step up. So with that, folks, we come to the end of another episode. Controversial, this one. As
not
you
us.
And but thank you so much for joining us. The Manufacturing Meetup, really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, please follow or subscribe. Like us, the episode if you are watching YouTube, or leave us a review if you are listening on iTunes. And please tell your friends. We love to hear from you, and we love for you to be part of the show.
That's awesome. Hey, here's a thought. If you have a particular guest speaker that you'd like to have on the show, right, or somebody you'd like us to interview, hey, drop us a note. Let us know. We're always looking, to bring new talent, new faces here to MMU, and look for your suggestions. So if you like this and you want to keep the conversation going, you can email us at mmu@augury.com. We'll also have the links in the show notes for this episode, and we'll see you next time. Happy Memorial Day, all.
See you guys.